Welcome back to the county seat. Our conversation today is surrounding Count My Vote. You've heard the argument in support of Count My Vote. Now an argument in support of the status quo, our caucus system. Joining me for this conversation, Commissioner David Miller from Iron County.
Chad, it's good to be with you.
Thank you. In our previous conversation, the last segment, the Count My Vote position is that we have extremely low voter turnout because of the caucus system, and it carries over all the way into the general election and through the primaries, and it's because the caucuses are so exclusionary and only involve 4% of the voters. That's what they said.
Well, I think that argument, that low voter turnout or the participation rate in elections is caused because of the neighborhood election process is an erroneous statement. I think it's flawed.
Well,
I think it's assumptive, and I think that it speaks to an argument that doesn't have any substance. Because, for example, in 2002, the federal Congress passed a law called HAVA, Help America Vote Act, and in this process, and it kind of came out of the issue that they had in Florida in the presidential election, where there were hanging chads on the ballots. But essentially, what happened was they implemented several things that restricted county clerks from being able to update their voter lists for a period of 2 presidential terms. And so we could take an example of a college community where they have thousands of students that come onto campus and they register to vote in order to participate and to, more importantly, to make sure that they get their in-state tuition. And so when they graduate and they move, they still remain on the original voter rolls in that county in which they registered for up to 8 years. And you could imagine the kind of interference that would create in getting accurate accounting of who's on the type of activity on voter turnout.
So basically you're saying that they may be quoting accurate numbers, but they're accurate because of an inaccurate record-keeping system that keeps a lot of people on the files that really aren't in that community anymore?
Well, no proponents of the Count My Vote initiative have ever even addressed this, and it's been addressed by many of the county clerks. And so I think that, as you well, and I think we all recognize, that statistics can do a lot of different things. And so utilizing statistics really should be measured in really understandable terms. And there's an understandable term that I want to speak to in favor of the direction that the neighborhood elections have been going for the last several election cycles. In 2010, the number of participants in the local neighborhood caucuses doubled. That's a big number. Mm-hmm. And in 2012, that number doubled again over the previous election cycle.
Okay, well, yes, they have increased, but it's still lower than the national average. What say you to that?
Well, I think that for us to try to put ourselves in the same camp as the rest of the country, if we're going to do that, let's put us in the same camp across the board. How do we rank in terms of our fiscal responsibility? How do we rank as a state? Utah's the best managed state. We've got fiscally responsible legislators. We have so many things going in this pretty great state that we all are so in favor of and appreciative of. Why do we want to exchange something that we're all enjoying as citizens of this great state in terms of our nominating process for an unknown, potentially dangerous path that mimics the model of Chicago politics? And I really mean that. This direct primary approach is used in the state of Illinois.
This to me ends up being a key point. Agreed that the caucus system as it's currently run has got some problems, and we've kind of taken it out of the neighborhoods in a lot of communities and made it more of a regional thing, and it's no longer a neighborhood discussion. But the key fundamental difference, in my opinion, one of the two most important parts of this is that that when you start in the caucus process, you get together with your neighbors and you define community values and you define issues that are important to you as a community. And that works its way up into the convention through the delegates, and it becomes the conversation that candidates have to respond to. If we are changing to a primary system and candidates no longer have that interface at that neighborhood level, they get to define the issues of the campaign. So they're now defining what we talk about, and it may not even be relevant to the local communities. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, one of the geniuses of American politics as a whole, dating back to the Revolutionary period, in fact, the word caucus actually comes from a Native American word that means council. And so when you gather, whether it's in your neighborhood, in your neighbor's family room, and if you've got too many people to fit there, you go to the school, or if you end up in expo centers and you're meeting together and you're discussing the issues because they're important to you, those issues are not up for sale. They're up for discussion. And that's a brilliant aspect of the whole process of caucus meetings, is that we get together. Yeah, it might only be once every 2 years, but as we discuss those in a real tangible way, we then select those people amongst our ranks, amongst the citizens, our neighbors that we know and we trust and we have some experience with, and we know how to get a hold of them. And we know that if they don't get a hold of them, they know that we will get a hold of them. That the fact is that we can put together a lobbying team on behalf of citizens in protections of their rights, their liberties, their properties. And you know, this is a great counter to what happens in a lot of states where they have a direct primary or just an open primary or a closed primary. And this proposal that Count My Vote has is closed primary. In other words, they want to have a limited structure, and they'll allow anybody who wants to go out and get a bunch of petitions signed. But think of the difference between a candidate going out and subscribing to somebody's better favor just to get a signature versus subscribing to their better favor on intellectual and true found arguments. So somebody is going to make a whole different rational decision based on what kind of approach you're taking. And again, I think the whole basis is, especially in Utah, we believe that we should be able to freely assemble without the government intervening and telling us how to do it. This is the offspring of what makes good government. When government crosses that line, we actually are losing good government.
Taylor said that there are groups of people like women, young people, and shift workers who have to work during a caucus, missionaries, et cetera, that are alienated in this process. In the primary process, how is rural Utah treated?
If we lose this model of meeting together and having delegates represent us, we will lose that contact with especially our federal delegation. And it's very concerning to me that if we lose that contact, we will be left really without a voice. And so the argument to have a voice really comes back to let's caucus together or meet together, and let's put together a lobbying team as citizens. And this is a brilliant way to do it. For us to lose that and replace it with a direct primary system where you could have 49 candidates apply for that post, and you could literally have a selection with a super minority, say 9%. Could you imagine 9% being the number that somebody gets elected? Is that democracy? That would never happen under the neighborhood election process. The delegates always will be selecting a supermajority, and if you get the supermajority, or if you don't get the supermajority, then at least it's pared down to where there's 2 candidates that do go to a primary. But the real important difference here is a primary coming out of a convention where delegates have had that vetting, interviewing important process. We end up with we get to choose the best of the 2 options. If we go this other route, we're going to be dealing with what we're always dealing with with the presidential elections, and many states are dealing with, where you're always trying to pick the lesser of 2 evils. Utah doesn't need to go that way, and I firmly believe that we have the winning model with some tweaks and with some continuous feedback and education and hard work. We will sustain this great state as the greatest state in the Union.
I do want to stress something very important, that either process, it will not work unless there's more involvement by you, the people who are members of the community. You've got to learn to drag your neighbors out to the primaries and, or more importantly, take them to the neighborhood caucuses, because if we want a collective voice, we need to pull everybody together on this. Remember, local government is where your life happens. Make sure that you are part of that process. Nothing can be more true to that motto than participating in elections in the early stages. We really will have to come back and address this again. Thank you for joining us on the county seat. We look forward to you joining us next week. We thank you for inviting us into your home. Comments on Facebook, Twitter, and we'll look for you next week.